Hello, YouTubers. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Follow the Money Network. Today, I am very excited because we're going to talk about the COVID-19 vaccine and answer some very important questions Americans are asking. The very first question is, how much does the vaccine cost? If it's free, who's paying for it? And if it ain't free, who's profiting off of it? Most importantly, how can the average American profit or make the most of these hard times? Without further ado, let's begin. So let's first go over the cost of the vaccine, answering the very obvious question, how much does the vaccine cost? Is it free? So the cost of vaccine is $25 for the COVID-19 Pfizer and Moderna vaccine. It's averaging actually between $20 to $30, just depending. Every article that I looked at to research the exact price quoted a price between $20 and $30. So I'm just going to go with an average of $25 per dose. And there are 2 doses required to complete the total vaccination to prevent coronavirus. So you're looking at $50. Now, according to the CDC, vaccine doses purchased with U.S. taxpayer dollars will be given to the American people at no cost. However, vaccination providers will be able to charge an administration fee for giving the shot to someone, okay? So it's just like saying you go to the doctor for a physical and they end up giving you the vaccine as part of that physical. On your bill from your doctor's office, you will see a fee to see the doctor, the hospital's administration fee, but you will not and should not see a line on that bill that says COVID-19 vaccine X amount of dollars. Why is this? Why is it free? And why don't you have to pay any upfront costs? If you go to a vaccination hub, if you go to a clinic, if you go make a doctor's appointment, you shouldn't pay any money up front. The reason why is because, like the CDC said, the government has already paid for the vaccine with taxpayer money. In the last relief package that was passed in December of 2020, you guys all remember that because that's where we got the direct stimulus payment of $600. And if you've been watching the videos or you're a subscriber to my channel, shout out to all my subscribers, by the way, you know that there have been numerous delays, unfortunately, for stimulus checks affecting millions of Americans who still have not received their checks, okay? Either being direct deposited or mailed to them. There are some issues. I'm following them very closely. Make sure you subscribe for more information regarding that as well. So, in that same relief package that gave us the $600 payments, there was a funding line that would give vaccine manufacturers a total of $68 billion. $20 billion of that 68 paid Pfizer and Moderna $20 billion, you guys, to prepay for our vaccines. So the vaccines are paid for, and that's why you don't pay anything up front, but you do pay from your tax dollars on the back end. So you should never be charged up front to receive a COVID vaccine 19, okay? Because we've already paid for it. Now, why are these vaccines such a great opportunity and investment for vaccine manufacturers and the whole vaccine industry? You know, vaccines is an actual industry now, and the way these pandemics are popping up, it looks like it's going to be a very much needed commodity today and well into the future as viruses are created and they spread around and they cause issues in economic turmoil, okay? So with this industry, since it does affect so many facets of life, viruses that is, the government has to work closely with these corporations that create these vaccines to ensure that they're safe and give them the funding, keyword, give them the funding that they need to get these vaccines out to the general public. Now, just imagine you were a vaccine manufacturer and you were told that you can create this vaccine for the coronavirus and help get people back to normal, okay? And you would be paid directly by the government. You would be prepaid for these vaccines by the government in the billions, okay? that is a really good investment and a really good thing for investors to put money into, because it's a sure payday. It's not like testing a new product and putting it out in the market and see who's going to buy it. It's a done deal once the government approves that funding and transfers those funds to those companies. Okay. So another great advantage that these drug companies have that create these vaccines is that there's actually a law that protects them against lawsuits if anyone dies or if they become ill or suffer adverse side effects after receiving the vaccine. So, in other words, you can't sue Pfizer or Moderna over COVID vaccine side effects, damages, or death. According to 42 U.S. Code 300 AA-22, the Standards of Responsibility Clause reads the following, you guys. No vaccine manufacturer shall be liable in a civil action for damages arising from a vaccine-related injury or death associated with the administration of a vaccine after October 1st, 1988. Okay, so this was established in the late 80s to protect vaccine companies. If the injury or death resulted from side effects that were unavoidable, even though the vaccine was properly prepared and was accompanied by proper directions and warnings, you can't sue them. It is almost impossible. And they are protected by this. And what's really interesting is that there is a company, or I would say an organization, it's called HRSA, the National Vaccine Injury Compensation Program, and they can't even help you. You can file a claim with them just to let the general public know what you've experienced, what unfortunate events you've experienced or a loved one has experienced after receiving a vaccine. And it's a really good database for the public to just take a look at. Although these side effects are very rare, they can happen. They say that, 99% of the vaccines don't have or don't give adverse side effects, and you shouldn't be worried. But there is that few percent that do. And just for your own education, it's good to know these things. Okay. So the COVID-19 vaccine is not approved by the FDA yet. Okay. Because it hasn't had enough time to go through the clinical trials a normal vaccine would have to go through. So instead of being fully approved by the FDA, the coronavirus vaccine has an emergency use authorization, and that is a mechanism to facilitate the availability and use of a medical countermeasure, including vaccines during public health emergencies, such as the current COVID-19 pandemic. So basically, they're authorizing use of this because there's a pandemic and they need to rush it to get it out to do something to help. They don't know for sure if it's going to help. That's why it's not been fully approved by the FDA. They don't know the full side effects as of yet. They know the general side effects based on the research they've done with the people who tested the virus for them. But as far as getting approved by the FDA, they have not had enough time to go through the clinical trials and tribulations that the FDA would normally have them go through to get the actual full approval. So that is the full approval is still in the making. Okay, so these drug companies got it made. They got the vaccine, they get government funding, they're offering it to the public for free. They can't be sued if something goes wrong, and they didn't even have to get approved fully by the FDA. Sounds like, wow, this just sounds too good to be true for them. I don't know about that's the case for you, the recipient on the other end, but that is for you to decide. I am not going to judge whether or not anyone should get a vaccine. That is a personal decision. I support your right to choose as an American. Everybody makes the best decision for themselves, and I respect that. Now, let's move on, guys, to COVID-19 tests. Now, tests were a part of the $68 billion that was just passed for the COVID-19 vaccines and the distribution of the vaccine, testing, administering it, hiring, the National Guard and FEMA to set up these mass vaccination hubs, really happening in New York, you guys. They have about 28 vaccination hubs, some of them even in arenas, sports arenas that are empty. They're using high school gymnasiums that are empty, planning to vaccinate, a couple thousand people a day. So those are underway right now, popping up in lots of different states. Now, COVID-19 tests are available at no cost nationwide at health centers and select pharmacies. The Families First Coronavirus Response Act ensures that COVID-19 testing is free to anyone in the U.S., including the uninsured. So that's everyone. Additional testing sites may be available in your area. You guys, all you have to do is Google your city and state to Google COVID-19 testing and put your zip code or your city, and you should get a list pretty quickly of where you can get tested at, and that should be of no cost to you whatsoever. We pay for that with the $68 billion our government has paid to them. Okay. A good example of that, guys, I just want to quickly cover is Illume. Illume is an Australian diagnostic manufacturer who created the first over-the-counter test for people to take at home to see if they have COVID-19. And on their website, it states the vaccine is not FDA approved yet, but it is authorized for emergency use. That's like the new FDA approval. I think authorized for emergency use, I think it's AEU. AEU is a new FDA. It's like, hey, we don't have to use the FDA's guidelines anymore. We're just going to get, emergency authorization use. Yay, that's awesome. Not really. So, this company Illume will be able to produce about 100,000 tests a day by January. They were given $30 million to create these tests from the National Institute of Health to ramp up production capacity, okay? So they were giving a big payout of $30 million to create these over-the-counter coronavirus tests. So by March of 2021, you guys, production should increase to about 250,000 tests a day. And by June, should hit 1 million tests a day. Find a COVID-19 test at a local store near you. You can buy it right over the counter. All right. So there's an old saying, never let a good crisis go to waste. As the coronavirus pandemic sweeps the world, America's 1%, that's the richest 1% if you don't already know, have taken profitable advantage of that old saying, okay? They've expounded their wealth to astronomical numbers. I mean, it's absolutely fascinating. As we go over numbers, you will see, you guys, when the pandemic struck, those at the top of the wealth pyramid were better positioned than ever to take advantage of all this chaos the pandemic has caused. The rest of us, not so much, other than the few stimulus checks we've received, which really go as fast as they come. We haven't really been profiting that much. So, researchers at Forbes have found 50 new billionaires in the global healthcare sector since the pandemic started. Vaccines have generated some of those fortunes. But Forbes adds, companies developing antibody treatments and drugs to help doctors fight the virus have also benefited from the market frenzy. It's just not the vaccine creators, it's the drug companies that create medications to help cope with the symptoms that coronavirus creates. Okay, can't forget about them. The bottom line is that we may have just experienced the greatest ever single year redistribution of wealth to the already wealthy. That's history, you guys. The greatest redistribution of wealth in 1 year ever in history. All right, so U.S. billionaires' total wealth grows to $4 trillion, over $1 trillion since the beginning of the pandemic. That is amazing. Some of the big gains include none other than Elon Musk. His wealth grew over 100 billion since the start of the pandemic. 100 billion. He went to 24.6 billion in March of 2020 to 126 billion on November 24th, 2020. That is a 413% increase in wealth. boosted by his Tesla stocks, okay? His wealth now surpasses Bill Gates. Who's next on the list? Jeff Bezos. His wealth grew almost 70 billion from 113 billion in March to 182 billion today. $70 billion growth since the beginning of this pandemic in March. Jeff Bezos, founder of Amazon. Next billionaire pandemic profiteer, Dan Gilbert, chairman of Quicken Loans. He saw his wealth rocket by over 37 billion, which is basically 43.9 billion more than what he had in March, okay? His wealth grew 575% from March until today, January 19th, 2020. You guys, that is absolutely insane, okay? Meanwhile, millions of Americans are suffering big time. Let's talk about the other side of the tracks really quickly, you guys. So 6.6 million Americans got coronavirus and almost 200,000 have died, so they say. Over 50 million Americans lost their jobs, with nearly 14 million still unemployed. 30 million are collecting unemployment benefits. Nearly 30 million Americans have gone hungry. 12 million Americans have lost employee-sponsored health insurance. They don't have health insurance anymore. Big swatches of businesses have shut down. 98,000 businesses, including 100,000 small restaurants. Insane. Okay. So, of course, follow the money here. We're following the big winners and the big losers of the pandemic, unfortunately. And there's a few losers and there's a few winners and a lot of losers, unfortunately. And that's usually the way it goes most of the time. So let's continue here. So the top 10 companies who've profited since the pandemic began. Of course, Jeff Bezos is at number one with Amazon, okay? A growth of 55.1%. And that was for the last 5 years. So since the pandemic, it was a 79.8% growth. Okay, so next on the list is Bill Gates, 20.4% growth. Mark Zuckerberg, 85.1%. Elon Musk, 277.4% growth. That is astronomical to me. Warren Buffett, 20.1%. Larry Ellison, 36.1%. Steve Ballmer, 42.4%. Larry Page, 37.6%. The list goes on, you guys. There are some Walmarteers on here who've also made a ton of money. Alice Walton, 54.4 billion, went up to 67.9 billion in just a few months of the pandemic. Jim Walton, he basically profited 13.1 billion, and then Bob Walton of the Walmart family profited an additional 13.2 billion since the pandemic began. So we can see that this has been a very great year for some people. It's always a general consensus that 2020 has been a horrible year for a lot of people, but for other people, it's been the best year of their life financially, okay? And then there's the other side of the tracks where it's been the worst year of some Americans' lives financially, where they've lost their jobs, lost their, family, probably got divorced because they were around each other 24/7. They've lost their livelihood, their sense of pride in going to work every day and being unemployed and collecting unemployment. You guys, that's all a big mental toll, unfortunately. All right, so let's continue here with some fun facts. Between March 18th and April 30th of 2020, over 30 million U.S. workers lost their jobs. Over these same weeks, you guys, U.S. billionaires saw their wealth increase 406 billion, an increase of 13.8%. Insane. If you had a penny for every time you heard me say insane in this video, sorry, but it is. It's totally insane. So let's revisit the original question. What's the cost of the coronavirus vaccine? The cost is an upside down economy with substantial gains for the 1% and tragic loss for the average citizen. What's next? Well, there's the vaccine ID apps tech companies are bidding to create. They're competing to see who can make the best universal vaccine ID app, which will show people that you've gotten the vaccination on a digital card you have in your phone or on an app. A lot of countries like China already have this app, I believe. Some European countries are developing it as well. I question the ethics of it, but hey, to each his own. Whatever. If you believe it'll be helpful and you agree with it, you're fine with me too. Everybody is entitled to their own opinion. Okay, can Americans invest in companies like vaccine companies, and how would we be able to do that? Would we profit? So what I've researched here is that Johnson & Johnson is actually creating a vaccine for COVID-19 that could basically put the other vaccines to shame. It's a vaccine that will allow patients to only take one dose. Like, who wants to take 2 doses of a vaccine? Most of us are so busy, we can't even remember right from left. You know, we have our calendars are full of events and appointments, and trying to keep up with vaccination number 1, 2, and 3 is kind of difficult for the average person. So the fact that Johnson & Johnson is solving that problem by doing a 1-dose vaccine will definitely be a game changer. With that being said, should you invest in Johnson & Johnson? So far, some coronavirus vaccine stocks have offered investors enormous gains. Obviously, Moderna and Pfizer, enormous gains, okay? So investing in either of those companies for their COVID-19 vaccines brought vast amount of different results. But if we look ahead at the next company to possibly enter the market, Johnson & Johnson is a great candidate. They are currently in phase 3 trials, and interim data is expected later this month on the effectiveness of their vaccine. So if everything is positive, Johnson & Johnson might be the third to cross the vaccine race finish line. Should investors consider buying shares of that pharmaceutical giant for that reason? Let's take a look. So if Johnson & Johnson investigational vaccine proves safe and effective, the 1-dose regimen could give it a significant edge. Of course, patients will take the idea of a 1 jab instead of 2 much more easily, and will prefer that vaccine over the other 2, I'm almost certain. So far, early data has been positive for Johnson & Johnson's vaccine. In phase 1, the vaccine produced neutralizing antibodies in 90% of trial participants, which is good, regardless of age as of day 29. So these antibodies were at the same levels as those of recovered coronavirus patients. Considering all these points, you guys, the situation is looking bright for Johnson & Johnson. Now let's look at whether or not, that's plausible. And I want to explore that in another video. But be looking out for Johnson & Johnson and that third vaccine. Okay. So that just concludes the video, you guys. I just wanted to go over a few things regarding coronavirus. We wanted to follow the money as far as the vaccinations and testings go, and we did exactly that in this video. If you found this helpful, please subscribe to the channel, smash the like button if you like the video. It's that simple. And until next time, thanks for watching Follow the Money Network.